Hercule Poirot sat at his desk in the quiet, dimly lit study, the weight of the case before him pressing on his mind. The soft ticking of the clock on the wall was the only sound that filled the room, a rhythmic, almost mocking reminder of the passing time. Poirot's eyes, sharp and calculating, remained fixed on the case files scattered before him, yet his mind was elsewhere, wrapped in the enigma that had begun to consume him. The case, initially presented as a simple one, had quickly turned into something far more dangerous, something that threatened not just his professional reputation, but his very life. The evening began like any other. Poirot had been summoned to the home of Lord Edward Ashton, a wealthy and respected member of society. Lord Ashton had claimed to be the target of an anonymous threat, a letter warning him that he would die on the 12th stroke of midnight. The letter had been simple, with no signature, no clear motive, just a chilling statement. At the 12th stroke of midnight, death will come for you. Lord Ashton had laughed it off at first, dismissing it as the work of a prankster. But as the hour approached, anxiety began to take root. It was then that he called upon Poirot, knowing that his skills in solving the most perplexing of cases could provide the answers he so desperately needed. Poirot, of course, had arrived promptly, his mind already piecing together the few fragments of information he had been given. He had examined the letter closely, noting the peculiarities of the handwriting, the subtle marks of pressure on the paper, the slight crinkling at the edges, as if it had been handled with care. Yet, as Poirot began to delve deeper into the case, it became clear that there was more to the threat than met the eye. The timing of the letter, the ominous warning, and the presence of certain individuals in the household all seemed to hint at something far darker. But what Poirot's thoughts were interrupted by the sudden sound of a clock striking in the distant 10 strokes. Taint. The noise sent a shiver down his spine. He had seen death before, but this case had a weight to it, a sense of inevitability that he could not quite explain. The clock had become an unspoken participant in this case, counting down the moments until the danger arrived. Each passing stroke only deepened Poirot's resolve. He had to solve this, not just for the sake of Lord Ashton, but for his own peace of mind. Time was running out. As the evening progressed, Poirot observed the behavior of those around him. Guests invited to Lord Ashton's estate, each with their own hidden agendas. The family, too, held their secrets, each of them a possible suspect, each with a motive that could have led them to this moment of danger. Poirot was methodical in his investigation, speaking with each individual, carefully noting their reactions, their hesitations, and the subtle lies they told. He had always prided himself on his ability to read people, to understand the smallest movements of their minds. But this case was different, right? It was as if everyone was playing a part, carefully constructed, yet far too perfect to be true. The clock struck 11, its chimes ringing through the large hall. Poirot's mind raced. He had only 1 hour left to uncover the truth, to find the source of the threat, and to prevent Lord Ashton from meeting his untimely end. The pressure was mounting, but Poirot remained calm. As always, he had faced far worse than this before, and yet something about this case made his pulse quicken. There was a sense of finality about it, feeling that the next step could bring everything crashing down. Poirot moved through the house like a shadow, steps light but purposeful. He checked every possible hiding place, every corner of the estate, looking for clues that would lead him to the identity of the threat. His mind worked furiously, connecting dots, considering motives, eliminating the impossible, until at last he arrived at a chilling realization. The truth was staring him in the face, but he hadn't seen it until now. The danger was not from a single person. It was a culmination of events, a chain of carefully planned movements that had brought them all to this moment. The 12th stroke of midnight was not just a time, it was a symbol of the darkness that had been creeping through Lord Ashton's life for far longer than anyone had known. Poirot's heart raced as he returned to Lord Ashton's study. He knew what needed to be done. Kata, the pieces had fallen into place. The clock struck 12, and with it, the answer was clear. But not everyone would make it through the night. Lord Ashton was standing near the fireplace, his face pale, his eyes wide with fear. Poirot stepped forward, his voice steady. "The truth, Lord Ashton," he said, his accent sharp and precise. "The person who wished you harm is none other than ... Poirot hesitated for only a moment before naming the individual. The shock that crossed Lord Ashton's face confirmed Poirot's suspicions. The murderer was someone close, someone who had been hiding in plain sight, manipulating the events, playing with time. Knowing that Lord Ashton's fear would be his downfall. It wasn't until Poirot had seen the subtle clues, the slight inconsistencies in the stories, the nervous glances, the hidden agendas, that he had pieced everything together. The threat had never been about the clock or the letter. It had been about creating fear, about playing with Lord Ashton's mind until he was driven to madness. But even as Poirot revealed the identity of the killer, there was a quiet, unsettling realization in the back of his mind. The true danger wasn't the murderer standing before him. It was the realization that Poirot himself had been played. The case had been designed not to test his skills as a detective, but to break him, to make him doubt himself, to make him question everything he thought he knew about justice, about solving mysteries as the killer was taken away. Poirot stood in silence, the weight of the night pressing on his shoulders. He had solved the case, but at what cost? The fear that had lingered throughout the investigation had been his own. The fear of facing something that was beyond his control, beyond the reach of logic and reason. This was the case that had almost defeated him, the one mystery that had made him confront his own vulnerability. He had emerged victorious, but the victory felt hollow as Poirot looked out the window at the rising dawn, the first light of morning creeping into the darkened room. He realized that this case, his most dangerous case yet, had changed him. It had made him confront his greatest fear, the fear of losing control, of facing a mystery that could not be solved with mere deduction. The 12th stroke of death had passed, but the lessons it had taught him would stay with him forever.